English. I'm the founder of Yael. We are a women collective, and we connect women patrons of craft and art to artists, makers, galleries, and our purpose is to create these connections to support this fabulous world of craft. Today I am at the also Town Wharf at the Barge House. It's an extraordinary space, very raw, and it's the perfect setting for the work of Toni Losey, who is the artist we are going to be meeting just in a minute, and we're going to be discovering her work. The exhibit, the solo exhibit that Toni is the guest of, is hosted by Emma Marinova, who is the founder of Cluster London. And I would like to introduce Emma, and I would like her to share with us what your work is. It's a very different concept from regular galleries. So Emma, thank you so much for welcoming us today.
Thank you for having me.
I'd love for you to share with our audience the concept of Cluster and what it is that you do.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Cluster overall was born with the idea and intention to deconstruct traditional structures within the art world, from art fairs to residencies, and as well how we just work with artists overall. The idea is to create a community, a platform where young artists can thrive, emerging artists, create connections for them, create opportunities to develop their career and give them opportunities.
So here you have actually taken over for London Craft Week the entire building. You have 6 solo exhibits, you have performance work, and you launched a book.
Yes.
It's a full plate here.
Yes, I think the event itself and everything we've done in this building is the culmination of our work in the past 1 year and a half. So this book it was born from one of our cluster craft fairs that we couldn't make because of the pandemic. This is a conversation between the digital and the physical. We're trying to reinvent and reimagine the way we experience craft. And then once the pandemic happened, I kept asking myself the same question: how do we keep supporting artists? And that's how the Artist in Residency program was born. I did a lot of research, and I wanted to create a program that is intimate with the artists. Everything provided: support, materials, studio, bespoke mentorship program, and this is how we came to have Toni, and that's how this beautiful exhibition was born.
Fantastic. So thank you so much, Emma.
I'd like to
invite Toni to join me. And you can see behind us, first we're starting with this incredible piece, and Toni is behind. So I'm absolutely delighted because we are in London. We are in the heart of London art world, and we are welcoming a Canadian. And today is Canadian Thanksgiving. So I want to wish you all first a fantastic Thanksgiving. I hope that turkey is in the oven because it's early morning already. And while it's slowly cooking, that you will enjoy some art straight from London. So Toni, welcome. It's fantastic to have you here. We're going to be looking at the work that you created as part of this residency. And before, I'm going to go behind the camera because it's really all about Toni today. And I'd love for you to start telling us about how you got into doing ceramics.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you. So I've actually been, it's hard to find my spot to stand, but I've actually been in ceramics now for many, many years. I started in a small town in Saskatchewan, Canada, and it was actually part of my high school art program. So we started on the pottery wheel then, doing well, it was actually a kick wheel for any of you who know. So I always compare that to driving a standard versus an automatic. So I learned on a standard, but I spent my youth really falling in love with ceramics. And at that time, it was the real focus, just due to the teacher that I had at that time, was really all functional work. So my early days were about really building solid functional work, cups, bowls, plates, and I've spent years doing that actually. And it's something that you know, as I started to have my family and develop, you know, that part of my life, the making persisted, and it was something that I just kept getting called back to. So it went through some variations over time, as you know, mothers.
It's life.
Exactly, we know. I mean, sometimes the focus that we want to have might not be there, but it's been a fantastic opportunity for me over the years to build this. And I moved from Saskatchewan to Alberta. I went to the college there and studied ceramics for a short time, and then really just ended up working a little bit out of a home studio. And when I wasn't able to be making ceramics, was painting, and always somehow or another in the arts. But and this is really while the kids were little, just trying to find my way to keep making. And it was probably about 15 years ago, the whole family, we picked up and moved clear across the country. I was young and didn't have actually a big plan at that time, except that I really wanted to be able to go back to school, and I wanted to be able to, you know, finish my degree and live in a place where it was affordable and practical for me to build my career as a potter, actually. So we moved to Nova Scotia. And it took me a little longer to get back into school than I imagined. But during that time, I built a studio. I taught in so many community art classes and in the elementary schools. And I really became, it was an opportunity for me to build that skill level and also to kind of establish myself as a maker within the community. And when I did go back to school, I finished about 4 years ago, which was wonderful. I got one of those great Facebook reminders the other day. It's actually quite amazing. My graduating show was the same week as this show 4 years ago. And this was my change to moving into sculptural work. This is when I really started. I'd always had a dream to work this way, but in those last few years, I finally was able to make that transition. And though the functional work still exists, I'm finding more and more that I'm moving to primarily the sculptural.
I mean, the functional work, yes, it is functional, but it's absolutely gorgeous. And I think that once we put one of your pieces on the table, on the shelf, or in the home, it has all that emotion and your colors and your softness. It's like bringing the sea in. I mean, I find that the whole nature comes in, and nature is very much your inspiration, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's, you know, it's been a very interesting thing to me as I've moved across the country, and it's actually lovely to be speaking to Canada right now, because I know that Canada knows what it's like. So I went from the prairies to the ocean, and when I lived in the prairies as a small child, my mother is a painter and my dad is a photographer. And we, on the weekends, would go out and photograph and draw lichen and rocks and all these different things that we found within the prairies. And I left a lot of that behind when I moved to the East Coast and really started to think about ocean and coral and barnacles and the things that were happening in the ocean. And my work took a bit of a shift at that point. But it was interesting because a lot of that influence was, though being beside the ocean, yes, I still hadn't actually experienced that myself. And I found that I was drawing on other people's experiences to influence my work. And it's really been interesting during this residency that I've just been on to make this body of work. Again, it's been during the pandemic, and I realized I want to find a way to build the inspiration from what I'm seeing and experiencing. And it's kind of brought me full circle. I'm suddenly back out in nature and I'm photographing, you know, macro photography of lichen, of mushrooms, of molds. And so now I'm seeing this really interesting transition in my work from ocean inspiration to those things of the land and the way those are grown. So there's a really neat shift that's taking place.
Amazing. So we're going to have a look at there is a little bit of background noise because we are in an exhibition space, and thankfully there are lots of people around. So I hope that you can hear us clearly, but let's get close to the work. And I'd like to start with this piece here that you have chosen as your centerpiece. What is the name of the piece, and what is the inspiration, before we get into the technique or anything like that? And I'm going to give a close-up of the piece.
And this is a title piece of the exhibition. So I've actually named it the same as the exhibition, The Outside of Inside. And really, this has been a reaction to the pandemic and that time that I was talking about, where I was working to start developing my inspiration as being more personal and from my experience. So this piece really, to me, is a direct response to that change in inspiration. So it's really about taking that inside time that we've been experiencing and this sense of our worlds being a little bit smaller, and then imagine thinking about that smaller world and how do you make that big again? Well, if you're taking macro photography and you're looking at the small details in nature around you, suddenly that small world is quite large again.
It is.
So, which I think is exciting. So this is my response to that, and I think directly related. It is quite active in here, isn't it?
It is. I think maybe we're going to go and close these doors because we really can't hear anything.
Yeah, we might have for just a moment.
Yeah, it's okay. So you can see there are lots of people visiting this exhibit. All right. Back to you.
Yes. So, where I left off, I think. So this piece is really looking at fungi and how they grow and how they develop. And this piece for me is a real turning point in my work also, in that it's really the first time in my sculptural work where I've actually exposed the inside, and you have that chance to look inside and then the things moving out of it. So it's a real, I feel like it's going to be a transition piece for me in the type of work that I now make.
And then we have these little barnacles here. They are very special, aren't they?
Yes, and without getting too technical, I suppose, they're actually a glaze. So they're a very thick textural glaze that requires quite a bit of precision in the firing, but it's something that I've been developing for quite a few years now and offers me quite a range of opportunities in how I can use it in my pieces.
Amazing. So before we move to the next pieces, I just want to give a panel look at this room. I mean, look at this space, how incredible it is and how suited to the work it is. It's raw, but the colors, we're going to see on Toni's work some pastel blue and pinks and yellows. And I mean, I just want to show you, look at this pillar, that raw pillar, it has the same blues. And on this wall here, you can see some pink and some yellow. And I don't think that we could have dreamed of a better space for your work. So I'm going to give my back to the sun because the sun kills the camera. And we're going to be looking at this series 3 pieces here. What are they titled?
So these ones are part of a group, and titling is always a little bit of a challenge for me, and I don't like to give away too much in it. So these ones are partly named by their colors. So it's Baby Lichen in pink. And then this one, again, it's consistent, Baby Lichen in black, and then Baby Lichen in turquoise. So I think for me, because the things that I make are a little bit organic and otherworldly and sort of exist in their own space, I find even sometimes throwing in the word lichen, I feel it can be a little bit too leading. I like someone to come in and kind of have their own experience with it and kind of place it in the reality that they think it should exist in. So sometimes I struggle a little bit with the naming of the work. But again, these ones really are a very direct response to the work that I've been doing with the macro photography in nature, and specifically, you know, with these pieces in here. These are actually porcelain inclusions that are fired individually and then worked into the clay in quite a bit of a process. But these are a reaction to lichens and moss. If you spend any time looking, you know, I guess at Instagram of mine, I spend a lot of time also posting those types of images because I'm endlessly interested in the colors and variations that exist there.
Mm-hmm. And the barnacle idea is, I find it
well, and
quite
again,
cute. I mean,
I think there's an interesting balance that's happening right now between ocean and land in my work.
So this one seems almost completely different. First, it's a big piece. It must be about 2 feet tall, I would say. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have any decoration. It's fairly balanced in the sense that the tentacles are the same length. Some are round, some have been flattened. There's almost an angle here. What I find fascinating is that your work is very rugged. Tell us how you achieve that effect.
Okay, so I'm very, I get very excited about texture and touch. And one of my favorite things, sorry, a little aside from the question, is I find when people come into the space or come in and look at the work, you see them all reach out and then kind of pull back because there's this feeling about them and you want to touch them. And I find that building of that texture really, I think, enhances that reaction in people, that they are very tactile. And I think, again, working in craft, we are tactile. It's all about the feel from the beginning to the end of making the work. So it's exciting to me to be able to convey that and have that reaction happen when people come in and view the work. As far as creating the texture goes, it's a little bit of an interesting process. All of my work is actually made on the wheel. So I throw on the wheel each of the appendages, and then I put the whole piece together. We can go more into that in a bit if you'd like. But I work very hard to smooth it completely. I get rid of all my fingerprints. I get rid of everything that I can. And it's just completely smooth clay. At that point, I put it through a firing, just the first, and then I start layering on slips and colors. And slips are basically a liquid clay, just if you're not aware. And so what I do is I use an air compressor and I spray this on layer after layer, going back and forth between textural slips and colors to really build this dimension and texture on the surface. So it's a little bit of a laborious process, but I absolutely love the texture that it leaves.
Now, can we talk about your choice of colors? Because we're going to see there's a whole table here of pieces, and it's mostly pastel colors. And they have a lot of nuance. I don't know if we're going to be able to see very well here because it's a little dark, but we can see it goes from this pastel pink to the gray, and in here we are more into the bluish gray. This is turquoise. Pastel, any significance to the pastel?
It's quite funny. I certainly never imagined that I would work in pastels. I have to be quite honest. Color has been a really interesting journey for me, actually. When I first started making my work, I struggled with adding color. In fact, my pieces were all white or black, and I really just went that direction at first. And then what started to happen was, again, looking at nature. And as I had said, I think at the beginning of this, I initially was looking at ocean and coral reef. And so, of course, the colors in there are quite intense. So that started to be something that influenced the color choices that I was making. And then as time has progressed, and again, working towards my own personal influences, I've been looking at things like slime molds, which the name itself is so terrible. I wish it had a beautiful name, but I'm going to tell you, if you do any, just take a little search online for slime molds, and the colors and the textures and the surfaces, unbelievable, just endless, endless. And my colors, though bright, still are not as bright as what you would find in nature. So, you know, it really is, though they look maybe not what we would expect to see in nature, they're kind of just a blown up version of things that absolutely exist out there color-wise.
So what I'm fascinated also is that you've arranged your pieces in a very linear way, but in nature, it doesn't work like that. And I'd love to, can we rearrange them a little bit? And I wouldn't say put them in a pile, but can we see them side by side and get a sense of volume and what they would look like if we had three of them together close by?
Absolutely. And just while I'm moving a few of them around, one of the reasons for this particular area being so linear, you'll notice that these all have a side that's been compressed, as did that large one we were looking at before. And really, this is just in response, again, to working on this residency during the pandemic, and just thinking about how we're in, again, those small spaces, but finding our ways out of them. So nothing's being stagnated, nothing's being stopped, but it is being changed, how it's able to grow and form and develop. It's hard for me to tell if you can see.
Yeah, no, we can see. I think it already gives us a sense of the volume and how they play, the interaction between the pieces, and how you can
show too that they are actually able to make some changes in their orientation. So I always think that's kind of interesting too, that
yes,
it's
absolutely.
it's not one way only.
Well, it's an interactive piece of art.
Yes.
And the owner, the collector, the viewer can arrange it as their mood, I guess, or as their emotions dictate.
Absolutely.
I love this one. Yes, let's look at this one. This terracotta color one, and but it has a little bit of black. I don't know if you can see the shades. Yes, we can see it nicely here. There's some black shading here. There's some flattening, and then it turns almost into a whitish pink. Where on the other side, it's also a little wrinkled.
Yes.
Places, so you can see the change in color is astonishing.
And I think, thank you for showing this one. And it was just in reaction to what we were talking about in the other one, the other three pieces that we just looked at and rearranged there. I have the luxury of working in 3 dimensions. And so when you first look at this piece from the front, for example, it is orange. However, I would love to give that opportunity that depending on how it's displayed, depending on where it is, it changes with the light, it changes with its actual coloration. It's one of my favorite parts actually, to really just make it so that as you look around it, the piece changes in front of your eyes. And I think this was a great example of that.
You mentioned at the beginning that maybe I'll get you out of the sun because the sun is in your eyes and it's not comfortable. You moved to Nova Scotia, to the East Coast, and you had to rebuild your community.
Yes.
You are a very strong community person. You were isolated, like we all were.
Yeah. How
have you reconnected with the community through your work? Has that been a way for you to reconnect with the community, or?
Yeah, and I mean, I know we've all gone through such a strange process here as we figure out new answers and new ways to reconnect. And what's been really interesting for me is that my community has grown, I think, where I used to really rely just on the neighborhood or on the really close community, well, physically close community. All of a sudden I started doing, live Instagram and Zoom talks, and I was able, it was fantastic. I got to do some workshops with some guilds in Ontario, which prior to that, not that I couldn't fly out there, but it was certainly a bigger process. And all of a sudden I have access and connection opportunities that we're just more accessible. So I love being back, like being in London right now, seeing people face to face has been fantastic. But I also realized there are ways to build community and access that I really probably would have avoided before, and was so thankful for during the pandemic.
What has been the reaction of the Londoners here? Because even though London is open, I can tell you there are not that many tourists.
No.
So the people who are coming to see your work are from London. Mm-hmm. What has been the reaction to the work?
It's been wonderful. It really has blown me away. The number of conversations I've had, I think the work surprises them a little because of the types of colors and textures I'm using. I feel like maybe it stands out from what they've seen. I'm not sure, but the reception has been fantastic. I know you did, Isabel, a little pan of the room when we first started, and one of the things I found tremendously enjoyable is quite a few teenagers and maybe early 20s, I'm not sure of ages exactly, have been using my photo wall as a photo wall, and they come in and they do selfies and they do little poses, and you know, it has been really enjoyable watching people interact with the space. I've been really amazed.
We're going to finish on this, which I'm very pleased to tell you that a little orange dot means that it's sold, and these 3 pieces are sold. Did they sell all at the same time or separately?
Yes,
they did.
Yes.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
How fabulous. Look at this. I mean, they are very yummy, I have to say.
Yes.
And the difference here is that you've put the dots what are the dots here?
Yeah, the glaze. So that's the glaze, again, at a little bit of a different formulation from that first piece that we were looking at. It's actually the final stage. If I'm going to add those dots to a piece, that's the final stage of the making process. And for me, I just love it's the layers of the texture and the fullness that glaze adds. It's just another dimension. For me, I always feel this is somewhat reminiscent of, I've got all these pictures of big red mushrooms with little white spots, and you know, for me, that's really kind of a connection point that's happening with this type of work here.
That's amazing. I'd love to invite the audience. I mean, this is live. It's your opportunity to ask questions directly to the artist. If there are any questions, please put them in the chat box, and I will read them to Toni. In the meantime, Toni, what's next for you? So you're here, the exhibit finishes, I think, next week?
Amazing, it actually finishes today.
Oh, wow, okay.
It was here for London Craft Week, so it's a very condensed, focused set of exhibitions across London. So it's a bit of a tight timeline, but it's really quite exciting as quite a few opportunities have opened up by doing this residency and having this exhibition. So, for example, I'm going to be showing work at Collect in 2022. So there's quite a wonderful opportunity there.
And we'll be there. I just want,
fantastic.
yes, absolutely.
Oh, good. We'll get to meet again. I love this.
Absolutely. Rudigal is doing a trip to Collect in February 2022. So we'll come and see you.
I love that. Wonderful. Yes. So we will meet there. I'm also going to do Ceramic Art London in 2022. And I'll be also in November, so it's a little bit earlier than I've got Salon Plus in New York. So.
Yes, because we should say that Toni also has been picked up by one of the top galleries in New York, the J. Lohman Gallery, that we visited actually digitally, I know, in February during Collect, actually 2021. We did a digital tour of 12 galleries, including J. Lohman, and I'm so happy that you've been picked up by Jörn, because he's amazing. It's a fabulous gallery.
Oh, I'm absolutely thrilled, and it's just, yeah, it's a very exciting time. I feel there's so many opportunities, and yeah, I'm very excited. I don't know what else to say about that.
Fantastic. Well, I just want, there are no questions, but I think that everybody is so blown away by your art. Maybe there is. Do you do any ceramic workshops?
Oh, yes, I do. And I'm actually putting one together for London right now, so that's exciting also for the list. But I do, definitely, I've been doing them in Nova Scotia, and I've done a few in Ontario. I don't have any booked quite yet, because again, the dates are still hazy with all the lockdown, just as things are opening up again, but I will have soon. So I'd say keep an eye on my Instagram and my website, and I will definitely keep that posted there.
Marie is asking, where do you sell in Canada?
Okay, so sculptural work, I do sell at Studio 21 in Nova Scotia, Halifax, Nova Scotia. And I also have Ben's Gallery in Ontario. We forgot which city. I'm so sorry. I've got too many locations in mind right now. And they right now have some functional work. Canadian Plain Glass has some sculptural work, and it's something that's kind of a work in progress, getting it out in Canada still. So,
right.
Yeah.
And the workshops are in person or online?
I do a bit of both, actually. If I can do in person, it's still my favorite, but I do some online ones as well.
And are they slab work or are they wheel work?
Often what I do is I do a little bit of everything, but I will typically do kind of like a little bit of a later stage. So instead of teaching the wheel from the beginning, what I might do is talk about ways to develop your wheel work and use it in new and interesting ways instead. So it's not a beginner's class typically, it's usually intermediate to advanced.
Right, fantastic. Thank you so much, Toni. It's been such an amazing pleasure. It's a delight to feature your work and to particularly being in London and being able to connect with you directly. Thank you everybody for joining us. We will be putting Toni's contact details on the video recording, which will be published, I would imagine, by tomorrow. Thank you so very much. Thank you, Toni, and all the best of the year. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everybody.